Hey everybody, this is Paddy from OddsOnFPL, and today I'm going to be doing a Premier League prediction for the 2022-2023 season. First off, I just ask, could you subscribe to the channel, trying to reach 2,000 subscribers before the start of the season. In the 2022-23 season, there's 20 teams: Bournemouth, Arsenal, Villa, Brentford, Brighton, Chelsea, Crystal Palace, Everton, Fulham, Leeds, Leicester, Liverpool, Man City, Man United, Newcastle, Nottingham Forest, Southampton, Spurs, West Ham and Wolves. From these teams, I'm going to be making a tier list, ranking it from the title winners all the way down to the relegation 18-20. The idea of this video is just for a little bit of fun. It makes me realise how bad my predictions really are. So yeah, if you enjoy it, put a comment down below saying that you agree or you disagree with it. First off, I've got to give you some stuff that you can either agree with or disagree with. My relegation trio might not surprise a lot of people, but I'm expecting Fulham to be relegated and finish in last place. They've had a bit of a bad pre-season and there's been quite a few struggles with getting signings in. So I just think they will struggle this season. Even though I do rate their manager, I think Mitrovic will do well and so will Wilson. I just think in defence they need a few more signings. As well as that, I think Nottingham Forest will go down. They were the side which went off through the playoffs. I rate Cooper, but there could be a bit of animosity next season in their dressing room, considering they've gotten in players like Jesse Lingard and Dean Henderson, who are going to be on substantially more money per month than a lot of the players there. Next up, to round up the bottom three, I'm going to choose Brentford. Brentford in the second half of the season were pretty good, but it was a lot to do with Christian Eriksen coming in. Losing him to Man United will be massive for them. I know they've made a few signings like Potter from Hull, who looks very good, but I think Brentford could struggle this season. So I would predict that Fulham would finish last, Nottingham Forest will finish 19th, and Brentford will finish in 18th spot. The bottom six I figured were pretty much nailed on for me. One of the sides which were to be within that were Leeds. I figured they'll be better this season because Bamford will be back. They made a few signings, and the new manager, Jesse Marsch, has brought in a style that I believe will be his own. It could work, but it may not. They were very close to being relegated last season, and losing players which are key to them like Calvin Phillips, and then they've also lost Rafinha. Normally, this should make a side much weaker, as they were two of the star players. But I think they've invested well. They've got a lot more depth this season. They've signed players like Mark Roca and then Aronson and then a few other players who will be more suited to the system style. I'm predicting them to finish 14th. Then in 15th, I think it's going to be Everton. Everton last season looked dire. At one point I thought they'd be going down, but somehow they just stayed up. It was more to do with Burnley not being able to catch up with them than anything else. There has to be some credit given to Frank Lampard, but I still don't think Everton are all that. Then in the place just above the relegation spots, I'm going to have Bournemouth. Bournemouth looked very good in the Championship last season. The only worry for them is where the goals come from. A lot of their attacks rely on Dominic Solanke, who's never proven himself in the Premier League. So that could be a problem. They could be one of the sides which go down if they don't start quick. Now, looking at from here, I'm going to move on to something a little bit more interesting than high mid-table, because let's be real, that's anything. For the title winner, I think it's going to be pretty obvious this season. I think they'll walk away with it. It's going to be Man City. I just think they're too good. The signings they've made, like Erling Haaland, will just take them up another level. And as well as that, I think a lot of players who they signed last season will go up another level. Like players like Jack Grealish, I think could be very good this season. They've also signed Calvin Phillips. They're probably going to sign another left back, but they've sold quite a few players. But I think on paper it's worse than in the reality. Raheem Sterling wasn't really nailed on, and then also Gabriel Jesus, he was their only striker but didn't really play as one, so that's a bit of an issue. I then think second and third place is a pretty easy one to predict. Looking at the second best side in the league, it's Liverpool right now. They've made some good signings, Darwin Núñez, but they have lost Sadio Mane. Then in Third place, I think it's Spurs. Spurs are one of those sides where I do think they could challenge for the title this season. The only worry for Spurs is do they have the long term stability to go with that? Their signings have been very good. They have backed the manager, and in the second half of the season, the Conte did looked very, very good. It's just about whether they have the ability to stay up there. They've got world class players. They've got Son Heung-min. They've got Harry Kane. These are players that could play for any side in the world, let alone in the Premier League. Then in fourth place, this is one that I think I'm not so sure based on their preseason because of how poor they've been and a few of their signings, but it's going to be Chelsea. I just think Tuchel's a great manager. They've got a more stable squad. They do need to make some signings though because they could be very weak defensively. And in preseason, they haven't looked great. I think they could drop out of top four if they don't make some signings, but Ted Bowley's going to just be running around all through Europe trying to make them. They've missed out on big players like Koundé and Rafinha, but I still think they can make some signings. They've gotten rid of Lukaku as well, and they've made Havertz their main man. Sterling as well, I think he'll be a good signing for them. Gone back to London. Then in fifth place, I think it's going to be Arsenal. Based purely just on they've got a more stable manager, a more stable squad. They've invested heavily again. They've made some good signings. I think Zinchenko is going to provide quality left back support, but Arsenal have a weakness at right back. They've been playing Ben White there because Tomiyazu's not fully fit, and Tomiyasu looks like a bit of a crock. And I just think they've got the talent for it. In sixth place, it's going to be United. I just don't think we're going to be that great. There's a lot of issues surrounding the squad building. I really like the idea of us going without Ronaldo, but it looks like he's going to be lingering around like a bad fart. I think that could cause issues within the dressing room if he's not playing, and the style of football might be different than what's expected. I think it's going to be a big season. I think there is going to be quite an expectation for the football to be good, but I'm not sure if that translates to points. Anyway, then into seventh spot, I think it's going to be Leicester again. I think they can't be worse than last season. The big issue last season for them was injuries. I think Leicester are one of those sides which are just outside the top six, which look really good, but, just that little bit away. Depends on Vardy's form. Patson Daka looks good in pre-season. They have quality midfield options, and if Ndidi's fit, they're more attacking players like Tielemans become better options again also. Then in 8th place, I think this is a side which could rotate with Leicester. They're the two best sides outside of the top six. West Ham have also signed Scamacca as well, who could provide good depth for Michail Antonio, who can be a bit injury prone. Those hamstrings, Then in 9th place, I believe it's going to be Burnley. Not Burnley, Brighton. Forgive me. Brighton always look good on XG. They've got a good squad. They've got a great manager. It's just about getting onto that next level. They've made a few good signings and like players like Undav, but they have lost players like Basuma. They could lose Neil Maupay as well. It's all about just making those signings which take them to the next level. And if they do lose Cucurella as well this summer, they could be weakened. But I do trust the manager. I think he's good. The issue with them is that they can be hella inconsistent. They can perform great and not get results, and then they can perform terribly and get results. Next up, it's going to be Newcastle. I think they've invested well. They still could make a few more signings in the window. If Callum Wilson stays fit, which is a big if, they could do very well, and I think he could be very good for them. They could even make a late push for Europe next season. It's also about the owners. If they could see themselves up and around European places next season, I don't see why in January they won't spend big. Next up is somebody who people would not expect to be this high up the table. It's Southampton. I really like their summer business. They've signed players for the future, and they're the players that are moldable into the Hassan Hustle style. If you look at the players they brought in, like Romeo Lavia, these are high potential players. Even Gavin Bazunu, they're high potential players who can be molded into something special. And I think it might be at the start of the season a bit of a slow start, but they will start clicking and start coming good. I think they've got a lot of good players in their ranks. Then it's Aston Villa. Villa under Gerrard, I'm not sure what to make of them. They can be great and they can be terrible. I think they've got a lot of good players in a lot of positions. They've got a lot of depth. So they could be a surprise package. I just sort of see them finishing around mid-table. I think up front, in Danny Ings and Watkins, they've got good players, but not really a striker who's going to get you 20 goals a season, which is difficult. I think Ings and Watkins can both score 10 plus goals next season, but then there's a lot of players like who have to fit into certain positions. Kamara is going to be great for them because they've always sort of struggled without a DM. And then in midfield, they've got Luiz, Ramsey, Bundia, Coutinho, who can play in a number of roles. And then they've got Morgan Sanson as well, Tim Ergamon, and then Chukwuemeka. There's a host of different options there. And then Jacob Ramsey's younger brother, Aaron, as well, is also around the team. So I think they've got a lot of talent in their youth team, which could benefit them next season. Next up is going to be Crystal Palace. I think Crystal Palace are a very good side. It's just they lack that little bit in the final third. Michael Elise looked good, but he doesn't defend. Then there's also Edouard, who looked good after like 3 or 4 games, but then didn't get a look in. Mateta is probably their leading striker, and that doesn't really inspire confidence in me to score a lot of goals. They still have Benteke on their books, and like Benteke is not going to get you goals. They do have great wingers though, with like Wilfred Zaha, Olise, and then they've got an attacking mid in Eze, who's very, very good as well. So they do have talented attacking players. It's just they don't have that striker. I think Edouard could come good this season. Yeah, I got there, but depends on whether he's given the chances to or not. They've got one of the better defenses in the league, and last year I think they matched Liverpool in terms of XG against. The final one is Wolves. I think they're too good to be in the bottom 6, but last season their XGA was terrible. They really looked like they would have struggled, but they've made good signings. They've signed Nathan Collins, Johnny's back to fitness, Semedo as well. Jose Sa is a very good goalkeeper. I just think they could struggle because their players in midfield are getting older. Moutinho's not going to be able to play that much, and yeah, essentially there's just a bit of the unknown there with Wolves. I think they've got great players up top with Neto, with Jimenez, but Jimenez is also injured for the first 8 weeks. They don't really have a backup striker unless you consider Wang that. So it's just interesting. I think in Podence as well, they've got a lot of good attacking players. There's just something there which I think is missing. They're in for Mateus Nunes, who would be an immense improvement on their midfield. And if they sign him, I think they could challenge for Europe as well. So yeah, that's my predictions for the Premier League next season. If you agree or you disagree, leave a comment down below saying what you think I've gotten wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong on United, and hopefully Liverpool finish mid-table. But yeah, this has been my Premier League predictions for the next season. If you liked the video, click subscribe, click like, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, I've been Paddy. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you found it interesting, and I shall see you in the next video.